The wildlife and those highlights.
Good evening, Oriole Nation. We'll be in session very shortly.
Her husband, their kids are older now, so they're empty nesters, and she went, they flew to Vegas for a couple days, drove to the Phoenix area,
Yeah.
did an RV,
Oh.
and went 2.5 weeks up, flew all the way to like Seattle.
Yeah.
And like just looked at all the national parks, and
Oh, wow.
I was looking at all the pictures, and like, oh, jealous, now I wanna go do that.
I know back in 2018, I did Route 66.
Okay.
Start to finish.
Yeah.
And then when I left Santa Monica, I came back through Nevada, Utah, Wyoming, South Dakota, and came back that way. So that was a 2-week trip. That was a lot of miles.
Oh, it's a lot, yeah,
So much to see.
there is.
It's almost too much. Give it a second.
Yeah.
What you do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Are we all online?
We are good. Yeah, we're going. Good to go. See you soon.
Good, how are you?
Yeah. So it's some, yeah. Not of some certain. Yeah. Yeah. So if you think of anything else though.
Yeah.
Between now and then. Yep. Yep. And the other estimates, those are just really sums up.
You weren't that.
Hi, how are you? Thanks for sending all those things for me. I don't where it is. I don't know. I'm really.
Yeah, I'm good. Whatever. Yep, we're ready to go.
All right, we are back. We returned to open session before. So now we're gonna move on to our board mission statement and agreements.
All right, so board mission statement, we will develop policy that is representative of our community, set goals, and lead our district by collaborating. And our beliefs are stand up and own it. So the work that we do, the statements that we make, we own those as a group and ourselves as well, pushing ourselves forward together. And that's that we are one, we're leaning in on each other to be the best we possibly can be. And then finally, always with the courage to grow, to learn, and continue to make this district the best place we possibly can for our kids.
Awesome, thanks for sharing that. Our next item is consent agenda, so we only have 3 items today. One is approval of regular board meeting minutes from May 20th, 2024. Second item is the approval of the special board meeting minutes from June 3rd. Both of those minutes were in our packets. And then finally, the treasurer's report, also in our packet. So looking for a motion to approve consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, then roll. Matthew.
Yes.
Hawk.
Yes.
Geckerman. Yes. Humphrey.
Yes.
Jaeger. Yes. All right, our next item is board members share moment of pride. You want to go first this time?
Sure, yeah, I'll go first. So my nephew got married this past weekend. Well, I'm proud of that. I got in the conversation with, it was a friend and they found out that, we're North Fond du Lac people and had a lot of positive things to say about the district. So this is someone who is not in the district, and they're like, oh, I really love the energy up in North Fond du Lac, and had a lot of great things to say about North Fond du Lac School District. So just thought I'd share that. It was unsolicited and it was well received.
There you
So
go. Awesome. Steve, you want to?
Sure. Well, obviously, and I think you all mentioned it, so I won't belabor it, but graduation, I always have considered that the best day of the year for a board member. That's what we're all here for, to see that success and see what happens on that day. I finally got to a pitch contest, the one at Society Insurance for the incubator EDU people, and that was really fun. I really enjoyed seeing the kids and how much the confidence has to have grown to be able to get up front and pitch their project and everything. So that was special. And then I was able to get to the Trefford graduation, which was really amazing. I enjoyed that. I'm going to pass around a little program that we had where the students were asked to just make a statement. And just one in particular that for me kind of wraps it all together about how important Trefford is. And I think he's got a nickname now, JC, maybe, or whatever, but his quote was, "I wouldn't be where I am today without this school, so thank you." And that kind of gave me shivers when I read that. I think that speaks a lot about the Trefford, the whole Trefford thing, so that's what
Thanks, Steve.
I think, I understand we got a $250,000 additional grant tied into the Explorational High School grant. So I just want to give a shout out to the team that put that together. And I understand Maria had to do some extra meetings with the DPI and some extra processing. So shout out to Maria for helping pull that together. So we got that grant.
Very cool.
All right, Tom, so a little over a week ago, I was out at North Bonnie Fest working. I think I was out there for like 7-8 hours, and very similar to Jacob's experience, community members came up to me and just praised how the additions to the new buildings are going and how progressive that this district is, especially with the buildings and adding on. So it was a good experience.
Awesome. Yeah, I had graduation as well. Love that day. But I think a round of applause to everyone on this side of the room, including that as well. Successful year. So I know 23, 24, they had many challenges and many successes. So just thank you all for your leadership. And then to the rest of the staff as well for their leadership and their contributions to a great district. And I think that plays into a lot of the comments, the people are what make it happen. So just appreciate all of you. All righty. Our next item is clerk's report. So, Terry?
All right, so for donations, this past month, we've had for Backpack Buddies, All Tools NDT Inspection Service donated $1,000, and Denise Gationbrook donated $75. And then donations to the Trefford Way Playground, Edward Jones Financial, $2,000, and Baker Family Foundation, $10,000. That's it for the clerk's report.
Awesome. Thank you for reading those, Terry. Our next item is citizens' comments. We'll pause for a hot minute. I don't think there's anyone that has anything. Everyone's here to present or share their story, so good. All right.
Mr. Man, nothing?
Yeah.
Okay.
I will go over to superintendent.
All right, here we go. Let's fly. We're gonna start out with principal share-outs. So I don't know who wants to go first. We didn't really determine that, but if anybody wants to jump in right away. All right, Mike. Try to find you where you're at. And then obviously Carrie will probably follow up with behavior and stuff like that, so. Go ahead, Mike, you can kick it off. I'll find it.
So I'm here to report on our academic progress for our student learning objectives as part of our school improvement plan. The SLO for bands was 40% of students would score at or above the 50th percentile in both the STAR reading and math assessments, comparing the scores from the fall, winter, and spring sessions, with at least 7% growth as well. So I'm pleased to announce that in terms of reading, the SLO goal was met just exactly at 40% with 13% growth. Math overall saw 58% meeting the goal with 20% growth. 6th grade and 8th grade almost made the individual 40% for reading, but they did not. The only grade that made above 40% for reading was the 7th grade with 44%. And then all grades in math made the cut. Particularly, I want to note that the 7th grade math students were at 70%. So hopefully all these scores bode well for our 40% results. Strategies that we use that we can attribute to this was we focused on specific standards and then the associated skills of those standards. And then we taught and retaught in the classrooms. We also identified students that needed interventions, and we, by grade teams, organized these interventions in Oriole time We had a school-wide focus on reading, writing, and math activities through Oriole time as well. For reading and literacy, we focused on phonics, vocabulary, and fluency across the board, each grade. For math, we had CESA 6 coaching. The focus this year was to provide more hands-on learning activities for students. And Jen Tao, I want to give her a shout out. She was a very valuable resource as a coach as well. And what she did was she helped our staff individually and collectively. And we had an activity where we mimicked forward exam literacy questions during Oriole time once a week as well. So for next year, we hope to replicate this success by providing interventions and enrichment opportunities during something new that we're calling WIN, which is what I need now. That's still in the progress, but we're working on that for 8th hour for our students to have that opportunity. We're gonna continue with our OT school-wide reading, writing, and activities. We're working on collaborative teams. We're meeting every Wednesday. Now that high school and middle school, some middle school teachers teach high school, we have an opportunity for that collaboration in literacy and math. And finally, we are having our learning and academics bucket team review our SLO for next year and determine how high we want to set the bar and continue going upward in our growth. So that's all I have. Any questions?
Okay, no, all right. Thanks, Mike, and I'm gonna have Carrie step in here and,
Scroll down.
thank you. This one right here?
The third one over.
Oh, got it, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, let's see here, district, school, BAMS. There we go, right?
Yeah.
All right,
So as you can see on the charts that are in front of you on EduClimate here, our discipline data actually went down from the previous year. We had 60 major incidents, whereas the year before we had 66. 87 minor incidents, where the year before we had 91. And then you can see in the percentage over there how much down they were, both around 16% and 15%. The full day attendance rate for BAMS was 90.38%. Which is, yeah, great celebration.
awesome stuff. Any questions for Ms. Nitz? Okay. Who's next? Horseman, you want to go? I know that it's, the document's right down below, so I'll just let you.
Okay. So my document looked a little different this time. I just put our Q4, just progress. Otherwise, I think it was 13 pages for the whole year. So if you want that, I can share it too, but I wanted to just be mindful to back it. But similar to what BAM shared too, but our SLO focus for the year, we really dove into addressing the vocabulary knowledge and expanding that with our students, because 3 skills, read, write, and communicate, are things we use in all content areas, and really are key values that we need to just have to be successful members in society. So these are broken down by grade level. So what we did is we took a practice ACT grades 9, 10, 11 to start the year as our baseline data. In there, it's just kind of a little oddly formatted. I apologize for that, but like our baseline for 9th grade to start the year. So 27% of students answered questions that identify your vocabulary knowledge or ability to apply vocabulary appropriately out of their questions. So we made the conscious we want to be reasonable and have goals that we felt we can meet. So each grade level, our goal is for an 8% growth. So 9th grade, for example, the baseline was 27%, goal was 35%. Our spring data, where we use retired ACT questions that also fall under that category. Actually 65% of students, or 62% of students answered correctly on that. So we blew our 8% goal out of the water, which is a huge celebration and a trend I'm happy to see. Like 10th grade, baseline is 39% correctly, goals for 47%, and end of the year, 65% answered correctly. And then 11th grade, baseline was 43%, goal 51%, and 70% was the end of year data. Then the next piece I just talked about, how do we get there? Mike shouted out Jen Towell, already. We worked a lot with her. We did a lot of PD with our staff and just focusing on, what are those universal strategies we need in our classrooms to, not just like, here's a new word, here's what it means, repeat it, spell it, things like that. We really dove into like, what's the morphology? So like science, what are your prefixes, suffixes, and how does that work? How do words work? To just build that base understanding. So when you come across a word that you're unknown about, you can use some of the skills already to decipher that in their synonym and antonym, but rather diving into degrees of that word. So instead of just sad and the other one like unhappy, well, no, there's levels of this. So sad or devastated, completely different meaning. And really just diving into that. That was a universal strategy we put in, even utilizing AI. It's here, it's not going anywhere, but how can ChatGPT help us with some of that, with the word meanings, and then sorting words, classification. Special education did a great job this year in just diving in on, how can I differentiate some of that with my students, and also have subcategories for them that were fitting to, the text they're using in their classroom. And then the big question, where do we go from here? And as I said earlier, reading, writing, communicating are 3 skills that we need for every person to be successful. We're going to continue this SLO goal for 1 more year, just to really ground that. But then beyond next year, that's just a universal expectation. So that won't go anywhere. And then we'll pick another data point to begin tracking. But we also just want to make sure we have a 2-year just pathway of what's that data. And now we know we can maybe elevate those goals a little bit. And in addition, like Mike said, we'll be adding an intervention team next year to the high school, and just really, what does that look like? We know what we want students to learn. How do we know if they learn, and what do we do if they didn't learn it? Or even enriching those students who are being super successful. How can we do that? And that's what that team will help, in addition to our academic teams and that. So.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, Dwayne.
Yep.
I'm gonna turn it back over to Snitz, or yeah. Let's get this right here. Move this around. Now let's see. There we go.
So for the high school, we also had a decrease in major behavior referrals. This year we had 65, whereas last year we had 75. However, we did have a pretty significant increase in minor behavior referrals. We had 95 this year and 71 last year.
Snitz, or Carrie, can you tell us what's an example of that, just so we know?
So minor would be like defiance or disrespect. That's actually the majority of those are defiance and disrespect. And the majority of those actually happen within the classroom for the most part. That's what our data is telling us when we drill it down a little bit more. So we understand that we need to work on some of those SEL goals that we can teach our students to kind of help with some of that emotional regulation and classroom expectations.
And just to add to that too, like, not that the comparable is the end all be all, but we were very cognizant with our staff of documenting this. From what I had understood historically, maybe those weren't always documented, but we said we really want to have data that's accurate of our students to know what's our baseline on that. So I think that may have led to a slight increase as well. And honestly, for us, it's data. We got to use it, and how can we improve? So that could be another reason for a slight uptick, is just they were very cognizant about, yep, we need to document that and create that record for us.
So the minor, does that typically stay in the classroom and then it gets kind of reported on the back end? Is that how that works, or?
Yep, so the difference between our majors and minors, our majors are administrative handled or
Okay.
office handled behaviors. Minors are teacher handled behaviors, whether that's like a conference with a student, a phone call home, a reteaching moment, things like that.
Gotcha.
And like Dwayne said, this year we implemented where teachers actually put in the minors themselves directly into EduClimber, where that hasn't
Okay.
happened in the past. So they're documented, and then they give us, we usually get a notification. There's a spot where you can send a notification to somebody, and so they'll notify Dwayne and I when a minor behavior was written up.
Okay.
And next year, we'll use that in our Oriole time, just as part of that SEL folks. I know we're not fully reporting out, but just we'll have nesting groups next year. So if we see a lot of defiance or disrespect, say it's the same 12 to 15 students, well, they'll get pulled during Oriole time and retaught. What is that expected behavior? How can we coach them up on that? Or, maybe it's tardiness to class, just some of those minor behaviors. Well, what are we doing to help redirect that and reteach that expectation in our school? So we'll implement nesting groups as part of Oriole time, just to spearhead driving that in the right direction.
Good. Now, was the emphasis on reporting minors the same at middle school as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
in the middle school, they've reported minors more frequently than the high school.
Okay,
Since I've been here 8 years, there's a lot, the minors are very accurate for our school.
got it. That's why not much of a difference. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Carrie, when you look at the overall percentage of how many kids this really affects, I mean, considering the whole population of the student body,
Yeah, it's like when you see this,
Yeah.
like for me and somebody who's working in it, I'm like, oh man, this is. But then when you really drill it down to the percentage of students, we're talking less than 5%, of
Yeah.
our students or somewhere around there, even with the attendance. So I know I'm here and maybe Adam can speak a little bit more to how EduClimber tracks attendance with like in seat time versus Skyward. So here you'll see for the high school, there's an 83% full day rate. When I just did a graph for share out with staff, we actually had, I think it was like 97% of our students didn't have a tardy or an unexcused absence, meaning that like 3-4% it was, did. So in the grand scheme of things, we're talking like 2% of our students have attendance related issues.
Right.
But when you look at that, you're like, ooh, 83%.
Right. Thanks for that clarification, appreciate it. I'm gonna flip over to Jillian, is that okay?
Yeah.
Staying right with this, and we'll go right into activities here. Sit.
Yep.
Yep.
How do we do this? There we go. Just kind of a little walking, not sure what's going on here. So, as we take a look at, our year in review of activities K-12, just a reminder, we did do a baseline survey first semester because coming in here with this new role, we really had no way to gauge exactly what is the level of participation with students participating in after school activities or just school activities in general. And so when we take a look at this, I don't know why this is weird. It's not how it was when I. So our baseline data from first semester showed that 57% of our students are engaged in at least one school activity. And so obviously we want to increase that. We want to see that 80 or above, where a majority of our students have this sense of belonging, where they want to be engaged within the school community. So we knew that after that first semester survey was implemented that we wanted to do a second one, obviously to keep track of, did we see an increase in participation as we, increase overall opportunities for students to participate. But we also wanted to see if we could pinpoint some barriers that might be preventing students from engaging. And so that was a real point of emphasis on that second semester end of year survey. So should I do all of them right now, or do you just want me to focus on Horseman?
I think is it okay to do all?
I
think
can
it's
do
okay
all
to
of them because
Yeah,
I
let's
started
do it.
with elementary.
Yeah,
and
let's do
worked through. So with Friendship Learning Center, the beginning of the year baseline data showed that roughly 69% were participating in at least one after-school activity. End of the year, we saw a drop to 58%. But you'll also notice that the number of surveys completed from the beginning of the year to the end dropped. I'm not sure what attributed to that. You'll notice that as a trend in all the other sites as well, except for Bessie, and I'll talk more about that later. So I don't know if our survey data is 100% accurate with the true number of students participating. So clearly we didn't make that 5% gain that we were hoping for, but we learned a lot. So let me just kind of talk about that. So one of the challenges that we know at FLC is obviously we don't have accurate numbers there yet. And we have a plan, which I'll talk about towards the end of this, what our action steps are for next year to create a more efficient process to accurately identify the students participating. But the other challenge, as we tried when I was working with Brad and Lauren, like we wanted to start like an art club. Well, we put it out there to try to solicit an adult to oversee or advise that club. There was no sense of clarity as a district. Do we pay for these positions or they volunteer? And so one of the things we addressed as a leadership team is we needed to do an audit of our stipends and how these positions are paid. So there was very clear direction from me on who is getting paid and who I'm seeking a volunteer position with. Some of the big learnings from FLC's end of year survey, you can kind of see there the barriers that we discovered and just kind of highlight some of them. 32% of students don't have transportation to either get to an after school activity or before school. So these are things that I'll brainstorm with district leadership. How do we overcome that? How do we get students opportunities? Is it running a bus route with one of our internal bus drivers? Or is it getting a collection of families that are going to have kids engaged? Are they willing to carpool? Like, how can we be creative in that process to make sure that transportation isn't a barrier for students to participate? The other thing that I found interesting was 25% of students that completed the survey said nothing interests them that is available right now. And so is that entirely accurate, or do we need to come up with a more streamlined process for them to submit proposals for what they are interested in? So that if there is a niche of students that want to do, say, esports, I know that's something we talked about, well, let's see if we can get that going based on their interest. So that's another area that we're working on for next year. When we take a look at Bessie Allen, this is the only site where we've seen a tremendous increase in overall student participation. And I got to give a shout out to Mike, because he really was an awesome collaborator on this and really spearheaded getting a lot of different opportunities available to students this year at Bessie Allen. So at the beginning of the year, we had 55.7% students participating in at least one after school activity. At the end of the year, we were up 72.5%. Based on the legwork that Mike did on that survey, that is really accurate information. He went through and cross-checked surveys based on students he knew were participating that might not have filled it out. So we feel like we have really accurate numbers, and we were able to see a tremendous leap, and hopefully we can replicate that at all of our sites in the years to come. So some challenges and learnings at Bessie, finding advisors for clubs. I mean, Bessie has an amazing process for getting students to submit their ideas. I want to start this club. I know who might be able to help. And the biggest challenge was finding enough adults to lead all these activities. We were able to expand and offer a lot of different things for middle schoolers this year, but there's a shortage of adults. So how do we be creative? I don't think we've necessarily tapped into our community and the adults outside of our school system, and that is something we need to pursue in order to get more adults into our schools and see the great things that we're doing and get our kids more connected with the overall community. Some of the, you're gonna see this with all of them, the whole idea of stipends and what we pay for, that was an issue across the board. We're trying to figure out how do we either compensate or market a position accordingly so that adults know what they're getting into. Some of those barriers at Bessie, you'll see 50% say nothing interests them. Is it nothing really interests them, or is it we're not marketing what's available well enough, or are we giving them opportunities to submit their ideas? Transportation, you'll see this comes up a lot. It's a little bit smaller here at the middle school, but no transportation. But then you'll see as we get with the older kids, there starts to become more responsibilities watching siblings. Those are a little bit more of a challenge for us to overcome. But some of these other things, like they can't afford fees, obviously we're not doing for that 3% a good enough job of making sure that they understand fees are not going to prevent you from participating. Those are things that we can take care of. So how do we make sure families understand if there's a financial hardship, what do they need to do?
I had a question. When we asked everyone the barriers, was it like, here are some suggestions?
Yes,
Okay.
we listed, like I worked
And
with
then they could pick
yeah.
as many, or?
Yeah, with our strategic team, I worked with the adults in my group, and we came up with an pretty extensive list, thinking of what could possibly be a barrier. And then there was also an option for them to write in something too, if something wasn't listed. But I want to say there was probably 12 to 15 options that they could select.
All right, thanks.
Horace Mann, at the beginning of the year on our survey, 67% participated in at least one activity. That dropped a little bit at the end of the year, but here too, this information is not completely valid because even though we saw an increase in the number of surveys completed, I looked at the breakdown by grade level. And even though our seniors are graduating, a large percentage of our seniors were involved in either a club, a group, or a team. Only 12 seniors completed that survey. So we're missing a segment of students there. So I would have anticipated that number to be on par or a little bit higher than that. So again, we have to address how are we accurately identifying students that are engaged so that our data is more valid.
So is the participation percentage based on survey response, or is it based on like actual people?
Yeah, the survey response. So students say, yes, I'm engaged in it with at least one activity, or no, I am not. And then there was subsequent questions based on how they answered that, how they would go through. So it's really, are students accurately reporting what they're involved in, or are they completing it? And we find at the high school, although our numbers were up at the end of the year, we're still under half, right, of what our whole student body is. So we'd like to see 100% of our students completing that. And that's why I want to look at, and I'll share this in just a few minutes, why I want to move away from the survey and figure out how do I work with coaches and advisors to have a clear roster that we're monitoring at the beginning of the year, middle of the year, and the end of the year, so we can see if are we gaining membership, or are we losing it, or are we sustaining it from the beginning of the year to end. So it's just developing a system for that.
Do we have on Skyward, I know we have like fees for sports, and you can see that as a parent. Is there a place where it shows like all clubs that they're participating in?
And so that's one of the things I've been working with Sue. So she's the new AD secretary that came on with me last year. There were no clear records from our predecessors coming in. Some students were tracked, others we found out, even though we know that they were doing sports or an activity for 3 years, there was nothing in there. So all we can do now going forward is making sure each year those are accurately inputted, and that will help a lot
Well,
too.
it'll help the student too, because I know when they fill out for scholarships and
Oh, yeah.
like to have
It's all listed.
it's all
Yeah.
listed, yeah.
Yeah, well, and even some of the things with like, if we're talking about athletics, like if there's any like code violations that
Sure.
issue suspension, those should be in Skyward too. Historically, those were not entered, to fidelity,
Sure.
like we can. And it's just a matter of keeping up with things. So at Trafford, we had 51.3% participating in at least one after-school activity. At the end of the year, it was 25, and Tiffany and I were talking, we didn't get the survey completion there that we wanted to. There's a lot of things that we could say for the end of the year why we saw a drop off. Kids don't want to do it. Everyone's tired. We had a whole class that didn't complete it. So it was just a teacher, for whatever reason, just didn't get it done that day because we had assigned days for these things to take place. And so again, that's why we need, I think, veer away from the survey mode. I think there's still beneficial things that we could ask students in a survey, but to get to an accurate number of participation, we need to have a different method. So challenges there with Trafford, again, just getting, the completion rate wasn't there. Again, the stipends, you'll learn some of the barriers here. And this is something that Tiffany and I have really tried to work on this year, is how are we making sure that Trafford students know that they have access to all the activities and athletic opportunities at each of the sites. And so how do I work with coaches and advisors to make sure that information is getting disseminated out there? And that's a work in progress, but it's going to be huge to boosting their numbers. And again, like 33% don't know enough to be part of the team. So that tells me they don't even have the information to know that it's available to them. So I think those are pretty simple fixes. We just got to figure out, again, it's systems and how do we make sure that we're following.
And that's really because charters are part of our district.
Yeah.
At those specific buildings like Trafford and Exploration, they feed into Horace Mann, Bessie, and FLC. So anything that FLC, Horace Mann, Bessie have, those kids have the same opportunity to go in and be participants in those areas.
And we want to make sure that they know that they feel, even though they are a charter, they're still part of our school community. And there's a lot of things that, we can still be a part of and be involved with together. And so in terms of overall celebrations, if we look at overall expansion of offerings, we are pretty, par for the course at Horace Mann. But at Bessie Allen, we were able to implement an indoor soccer club. Over the winter, we had a drama club. We had, what was it, like 38, 40 students
Right on there.
involved with the drama club for the first time, and it's super exciting. They did an awesome job, and that is just, that's a spring, that's a feeder into the high school. So that's gonna bode well to get numbers up. I'm excited talking with Evan Frank how we're gonna expand that drama club for next year. We're actually gonna invite some of our fifth graders to join that. So we also had art club, principal student cabinet, some other things that are in progress now that we just didn't get launched quite yet, but a lot of things that we were able to do at that level. We had some great ideas going on at FLC. We just didn't get them launched, but hopefully we can get things going for next year. We had been having discussions as leadership, as a leadership team and with just individuals within the district regarding how do we search for advisors. And I mentioned it before, I'll say it again, we need to reach out to our community, and whether it's retirees or other organizations, or there's adults out there that are more than willing to come in our schools and lead things, but they gotta know that there's an opportunity out there. And so it's just a matter of creating those partnerships so that we have a pathway to get people into our buildings. And I think that's key because we do see a burnout with our teachers. A lot is being asked of them, and obviously they want to make sure students continue to have opportunities. And so when I put it out there, like, well, if you can't find anybody, I'll do it. I want people to be excited about it. We don't want it to be a burden. So if we can start getting some community partners in there, maybe that'll alleviate some of the undue stress that it puts on teachers and staff within our buildings that feel like they just need to keep giving more. If we can find that balance.
And that clarity for teachers, I mean, the reason they can't is they probably are doing one or two other ones at the same time in addition to their own classroom, so.
And then, we just really discovered this year the need for a system, whether it's a system for identifying students participating, but we had an awesome system going on at Bessie for how students submit proposals. I want to replicate that at FLC and at Horace Mann, keep it a very similar process throughout all the sites so that students know, hey, if I have an idea, whatever grade, I know this is how it's done. And it'll all get funneled through me. So some great things to work on for next year. So just action steps for next year, and I apologize, I don't know why these slides are cutting off. But we are going to do a new method for tracking. I'll be working with Secretary Sue Immel to figure out how we get the most accurate roster numbers, and that's going to be maybe a little bit of a learning curve or a challenge for some of our advisors to just kind of wing it, but we need to have some accurate names and grade levels for students that are participating. We want to get that streamlined process for submitting ideas for different club and activity proposals going, just like we have at Bay. And then continue to work with our building principals and district leadership team to address some of those barriers that we learned about, and see how we can make some positive trends to get more students involved. Questions?
Sounds good.
Thanks for sharing.
Appreciate it. Let's see. Okay, back to the. Scroll up here. Is there-
No.
Lauren, I think you're up.
Next.
Yeah.
All right. So when I think back on like the last time we were here for our meeting, and I know the focus is really to talk about the learning and academics, and I definitely will get there. But I just wanted to kind of highlight too, like all of these areas are so intertwined and they don't work in isolation, and there's so much work that happens at all levels, but I especially think about elementary in terms of like the whole child. So everything we're doing with safe and emotionally healthy schools and communication and engagement. And I'm always really just impressed by all of our people and their, I think, commitment to just, again, tapping into all of those buckets and making sure we're well-rounded. So, for example, like the transition nights that we do for our 4K coming into kindergarten and just getting those families and kids in, I think is so important for that overall transition, which again leads to learning and academics. I think about the fun that we tried to have like the last few weeks, just like really trying to send our kids off on a good note and making sure we were creating some of those peak moments so that when they look back on school, they, have some really great memories. We had a staff versus student basketball game, which was pretty exciting, that we want to figure out like how we can kind of bring that back with some other sports as well. And then just the focus this year was on math, but all of the work that we really had to shift to also with ELA and just that launch of Act 20 and the preparation with Amplify. And so thank you again for allowing us that day to really dive into that learning. It was just, I think, really impactful. And I know our teachers were really appreciative to have that time to just kind of plan and think ahead to next year to make sure that we, can start the year off on a good note. Looking at our academic data, so I did revise our building SLO to look at forward data because I wanted to really kind of think a little bit differently in terms of STAR. So you can kind of see there's a few different goals in a sense written, but that first chart breaks down STAR math data, the number of kids or the percent of our students within that grade level who were at or above the 50th percentile. And you can see that we had some really good gains from fall to winter and then winter to spring. One grade level who had really good results, and then a lot of the other grade levels just really kind of remained, I would say, stagnant or dipped a little bit in terms of really breaking down those numbers with the different performance levels as well. The chart right below there is showing the different percentage of students at or above the 50th percentile in winter. And in talking with Adam also, and feel free to jump into Adam at any point with our STAR data, winter tends to be that highest point for us. And so I wanted to kind of show that we are making some really great gains overall. And although our spring data isn't necessarily where we want it to be, it's still really neat to see that peak that we hit in winter in terms of having 61% of our students at or above that 50th percentile. On average, our kids did gain about 60 points, which is just a little bit over 1 year's worth of growth. I believe 50 points is 1 year's worth of growth in STAR data. So we learned a couple things. We'll obviously learn a little bit more when the forward results come out in a couple weeks, because that was how that goal was revised. So looking at those numbers too, the goal statement was written that will decrease to see that number of students who are below basic to be 15% or less. So over the course of the last couple years, the year prior, we were at 19, the year before that, 26, the year before that, 42. So again, we want to just keep chipping away at making sure that we're having our students lean into that proficient category and moving them out of below basic. So we'll have that data at the end of July. And then I guess in terms of kind of what we learned that I think will be our springboard into next year, when we did our data dig in the spring, we did realize that our lowest domain in mathematics is measurement and data. So that was a consistent trend that we saw with all of our grade levels. When we looked back at our priority standards, we also noticed that there were some grade levels that did not have a standard in that domain as a priority. So we feel that that might be just one action step that we can take in terms of are we prioritizing that? And then how can we take that domain along with all the other domains and continue to use that tool of building thinking classrooms as kind of that driver for student engagement and those response opportunities. So it's been really neat to see just overall math engagement in the classroom and just kind of that constant chatter of kids not only talking in pairs and small groups, but being able to talk about their thinking and not just the importance of the answer, but how did they get there and being able to articulate that. And then lastly, we want to be able to, we're doing so much work with Bridges and we have a lot of common assessments within that tool. And we're documenting that, but it's not necessarily something that we're also then aligning to the data that you see in EduClimber. So we want to be able to not only look at STAR math data, but also look at, okay, how are students performing on their end of the unit assessments or on their checkpoints and see what that correlation is. And it's been interesting because I would say our teachers looked at that specifically, and it was all over the board. So we had a 4th grade teacher whose STAR results are really good saying, I'm not seeing this in the classroom necessarily. And then we've also seen the opposite of, they didn't necessarily perform really well on STAR, but their assessments in the classroom are showing something different. So we want to just kind of continue to build on those data points, because that one data point doesn't tell the whole story. So we want to be able to just really have a well-rounded picture when we're looking at that. And then ELA, which is a huge undertaking, and we're excited about that. We're day 3 tomorrow of a 6-day training as administrators, and we're learning a lot, and that's going to be a really big lift and focus for next year too, but want to keep the momentum going with math.
Any questions for Lauren? All right, Brad, you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right, let's do it.
Yeah, FLC, I'll say off the bat, there's some good wins here this year. I guess when you're in it, you don't always reflect on that, so you start really looking at the data and like, hey, how was the year? We did have some wins, and that's a lot of testament to our staff and just a lot of things that we're rolling out. When you look at total number of students with majors and minors last year, majors were 69. We lost one of that in that space, so we had 68 kids with majors. So a lot of those typical majors are hands to self. That's a big one for us. Getting along with peers, some of those social emotional type things that we're continuously working on and trying to build in within our kind of our restorative pieces and morning meetings and trying to build through those. So minors, we lost 30 kids, which is a real big win there in terms of how many have gotten minors. Overall, when we look at the minors, we had 307. Last year we had 430. So we're down quite a bit there, almost 16%. So a lot of that has to do with just teachers being a lot more comfortable with what we're trying to do for kids in terms of our restorative, our CPS work with Ross Green, really starting to dig in even more with that. And we'll be talking more about ERO and how we can use that as another tool as well to try to help with some of these behaviors, and not always documenting, but teaching and learning first. And then what does that look like moving forward? So that's huge, huge there. Majors, we had 149. Last year we had 153. So we're down a little bit. Like I said before, a lot of those majors are, hands and feet to self, getting along with peers, some transitioning, and just working through a lot of that piece, but down there too. So another good win. In terms of attendance, we're typically right there. We improved a little bit, 93.62, which is a big win in terms of the amount of kids that we have, and just our littles get sick, and just working with families and just trying to improve in that area every year. My brain is already going to next year, and how do we get better, and how do we, as Jillian talked about barriers and certain things, that's a lot of our attendance is how do we get transportation, how do we get families here, how do we reach out, what are our outside resources, and just really trying to tap into a lot of those as we move forward. So.
All right. Any questions? All right, thank you. Let's keep moving on. Who was the next one up? I think maybe Trevor. Yes.
All right.
Tiffany, you ready?
Yeah, I am ready.
Let's do it.
Our focus this year was on our local reading assessment using STAR literacy. So at the start of the year, we had 28% of our students that were proficient, and we wanted to see that number grow. At the end of the year here, we were at 36% proficient, so a little bit of a dip from January, but still growth from the start of the year. I did dig into all of our students, and something we did see is that 68% of our students demonstrated growth from January to May. So although they weren't quite at that proficient level, we still saw a huge percentage of growth if you go down to that fourth quarter. So we were excited about that. This year, each specific teacher picked a strategy to focus on in their class. Moving into next year, I really want to look at like a school-wide goal that we can focus on, or a school-wide strategy, and really digging into a strategy that ties into like literacy, but also that we can bring into the projects that we're doing within our school. Other things we're really looking at next year is trying to build in an intervention time. That's not something that we've had in the past at Trevor Way, but we're hoping that we can look at our schedule and adjust it a little bit. So we are planning to shorten our soft start, so still keep a soft start, but instead of 30 minutes, shortening it to 20 minutes, which then adds a little extra time for teachers in a literacy block or for an intervention time in the afternoon that we could have a school-wide intervention. Like Lauren said, that training, one of the big things they're emphasizing is making sure the students have that grade level instruction, and then the skills that they're missing, making sure that we're building that into intervention. So that's important to us that we want to add into our schedule for next year. Obviously, the new literacy tool, we're excited to have access to that as well for our K-5 students. We really want to also dig into how can we continue to share students across homerooms. If I'm teaching a skill, instead of you teaching the same skill, how can you challenge a student? How can you work on remedial skills? So really looking at how we're sharing our staff. We're continuing to dive into our priority standards, and then just always looking, like Lauren said, this is one data point. How can we look at other data points that we have as well? So.
Any questions for Tiffany? And we do not have any climber results yet. Yeah. Okay. All right. And Chris, are you ready? Okay.
Okay. So our overarching goal for the special ed department this year was to increase literacy achievement with students with disabilities. We had some movement and some celebrations in pockets across the district over the course of the year. Our overall growth in grades 1 through 5 was 10.67% to 11.25%, so a little bit. And then growth 6 through 8 was 14.58% to 16.67%. So that's a celebration. There were some students that moved 2 grade levels over the course of the year, which is a huge celebration. So like I said, we had those little pockets too. We are going to redesign and do some tweaking just on how we measure progress and continue working hard with our students in special ed to improve their reading skills. I'm going to align this goal with each building SLO next year so that we can really drill down to target the lagging skills that are getting in the way of them making progress with their reading. We're also looking at using a common assessment so that we have comparable data, apples to apples, to monitor and share so we can inform our practices and then select interventions to help strengthen and grow those lagging skills that are impacting our students with their ability to interact with us. We understand it's a journey and it's going to take time, but we're very committed to the work and we anticipate steady growth over the years.
I don't think it's a big deal, and I could be reading it wrong, but on the grade 5 growth, you have 10.67 to 11.25. But on the chart, up of the very first chart, it said the fall for 1 through 5 was 19.23, not 10.67. So if you go.
Is it what quarter? Is it in a quarter or is it the
very first thing on the top? Oh, yeah.
Right here?
Is there another page here?
Oh, sorry.
Right there on the bottom. So it's there, the fall says 19.23% above 500. And then 16.6 for the 6 through 8. But on that bottom, where you're comparing the growth, you had 10.67, 14.58. So way down.
Keep going.
I think.
And this
You're right
this was tricky to work with because we were planning to use STAR to assess all the grades, but that really wasn't happening at the high school level. So we switched to using that practice ACT, which is just, that's, again, I'm talking about high school, but that was just one snapshot. Next year, we want to have a common assessment so we can track everything. So yeah, thank you for pointing that out.
Any other questions? All right, I just want to say again, I think John was saying this already, we're very fortunate in this district and to have some amazing leaders. The work that they put in, and they get after it, and obviously there's a lot of things that come in the way, and they continue to pivot and figure out ways to do this, but just the wherewithal and commitment to do this work too, just so you can be able to kick this out and say, okay, here's what we got specifically in academics and learning. is a really awesome thing that they're starting to dial into. We're seeing some really good development, some foundation here. We're really excited about the years to come with this as well. And the work is just starting. And if you notice, even on this continuous school improvement, you see safe and emotional healthy schools, and you also see engagement and communication. And if you notice on some of these too, they've already got some of those things. And I think Lauren was trying to refer to some of those other things that are going on too with our buildings. So this year we really focus primarily on academic and learning. We're going to continue that, obviously, and we'll figure out like how do we relay some of those other messages to you too in the future. Next year we are going to go from 4 share outs to 3. And the reason for this happens to be with when assessments are given and the data to return. So we don't want to come in and say, well, we haven't got the data yet. We want to make sure that we've got that. It makes more sense to have those 3 times versus the 4. We'd also like to get our strategic planning teams to come in. Jillian mentioned this for a moment within student engagement, and you're going to see some of this when I walk through the strategic plan just a little bit. There's 3 teams that are working on 3 different areas that they'd like to report out to what the work there is going on in that area. One is staff retention, one is staff wellness, and the other is the student engagement and activity. So we've got groups of teachers, counselors, other individuals who are part of that strategic planning that are going to continue to do that work from the current state to the desired, and what kind of action steps they're going to be getting done for that as well. Any questions at all with this work or comments?
I would just like to say, I've been about 2.5 years, maybe, something like that on the board. And the difference between when I started on these kind of meetings and where we are now, it's night and day, and it's just an exciting thing to watch from our side. And looking at these reports, it's easy to tell how much work you guys are putting in, and it's very much appreciated. I want to make sure you know it's noticed, because it's a huge difference from when I started.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, awesome.
I'm going to move on to the next area, if that's okay with everybody. We're going to flip into engagement and communications, and we're going to talk about strategic planning update. I'm going to pass around something actually that Rick put together here. It's a nice little good summation of this work. And again, we've got some tweaks to still consider. Here's one for myself. So when we review, and I've been working with Adam Broughton too on this a little bit, just so that we can share some of the things that are going on here. And I'm just going to jump to the work. But if you remember, there's 4 buckets. We've talked about it a little bit here. They're all on the back wall too. Learning and academics, financial and operational stewardship, engagement and communications, and then safe and emotional healthy schools. And under each of those buckets, there's key performance indicators. And we started walking through a little bit of that stuff today when we talked about local assessments in math or local assessments in reading. And each of those KPIs are a different, as far as the overall total. Then based upon what that overall total is, they are rated, per category here. This is not an accurate statement because this is just a quick example of what it looks like. But we will shortly have ratings for each one of those buckets in those areas specific to, where it lines in terms of where you were rated in most of those KPIs. So just want to give you a heads up. That's, coming to you very shortly. And Adam, I'm gonna kind of turn to you too a little bit too, and we can talk about EduClimber too as well. I've got that up as well. But if you want to, let's just talk a little bit about the district report card, where we stood, and then now, nothing more than kind of what's going on.
Yeah, totally. And what we're building too, is love to get some feedback from the board, is basically visuals of all these in EduClimber, so you can have access to look at those pieces. So Matt can pivot out from that too. But yeah, so yeah, that one right there. So some of this is still in progress, but again, there's those 4 buckets again, kind of in that visual there, Dr. Mino, we could probably put that overall score for each of those buckets too, could go right there. But that,
yes, right.
Basically just pull that language off of that KPI document. So if you go down the learning academics, there's our charts for there's school report card from the previous year, then that current year. And then that green line is kind of that goal or that 3-star line. So, so as far as this KPI goes, just from, our district report card is really the driving factor of this one. I did put the school report cards on there, just so you have that for context, but we're oh so close to that 70, which would be the 4 stars, but last couple of years kind of right at that 69.8.7. So
yeah, I'll flip back in here quick and show you at the same time what he's talking about here. So the rating was at 3 stars. We're right in that wheelhouse, but this year we're in the same spot by just a little bit as we move forward. And again, all the work you just heard in terms of the math, the literacy, those things should, in time, play a factor and keep moving those things up. Okay. Again, we're seeing some, key movements within that, but just a little bit of a share on where that's at right now. Student connectors, Adam.
Yeah, and this one, still trying to get the final data points for this year on this, but basically how many students are in those receiving college credits, so in those AP courses or do enrollment courses, or getting some of those business credentials. So that blue line is correct. So we were at 58% last year. That kind of yellow line is kind of a placeholder. I think we went up a little bit, but I want to verify that. So I kind of put like a draft down there in the title if it's not complete information. So,
so if you look on this sheet that you just got in front of you too, it kind of shows you yellow, we stayed the same. Green means we went up a little bit. Red means we went down. Okay. And if you look at the overall, I think we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 individual KPIs across the whole board, and each of the buckets go up, which is a lot of sheet cake for people who are knowing what that is. We're supposed to celebrate, those moves up. And then we've got about 4 that are staying and remaining the same. Depending on the student connectors, we'll find that out. And then there's like 3 that actually went down. The staff wellness on the very bottom of this, that was the first time we took that assessment. So it's not necessarily red, it's just where it's at. So some of these things have just come out for the first time as well. So you can see that when we're walking through these areas. Adam, you want to talk about the reading and math quickly here then too?
Yep, and those last 2 indicators in the learning and academics buckets are our star reading, star math, so district-wide scores for those. You can see, again, those last 2 years, just for context on that, and then that mark is kind of that goal or that 3-star rating. So sometimes even again, you might not move a star, but you can see maybe there's growth within that star, but and kind of like Matt alluded to too on these visuals here, we do have like that score in that title, and then if there was a change from that previous year. So all of this is kind of up for grabs too. Like at the board, if you like something like this, we can tweak this. But I think as Matt and I talked, we kind of like the 1 year to the next kind of for context, and then again, it's a living live document that at any point if you want to see where things at, you have that in those buckets. So.
Okay. Thank you. Just gonna go back to this quick. We walked through these just really briefly. I'm gonna flip into the financial and operational areas. And Maria's gonna, there's not a lot, we can share a little bit here, but walking through this really pretty quickly. This is where we were at the beginning of the year. If we look at the end, we stayed and remained the same. Any comment on that, Maria, in terms of it was what it was?
Right. They typically, Moody's will call us and we'll do an interview with them, and then they will adjust the bond rating, or if they see a really big swing in our financial statements, because every year I have to submit those to Moody's. And they may reevaluate our bond rating, but it's stayed the same the last few years now.
Okay. And our fund balance?
Our fund balance, we have some opportunities there. That's one of the big reasons we're going to operational referendum in November. Last year we ended at about 17%, and right now it's looking like we'll end just below 15%. So some opportunities there for growth.
And our audit? KPI?
Yes, our audit, the management letters are pretty much the same every year. We have a really, really good working relationship with our auditors. But in talking with Matt, we changed the criteria because we will always have one finding in our audit, and that's because I don't complete the financial statements, the audited financial statements. You really need a CPA on board to be able to do that. Most districts have that finding. So, I mean, there's just a handful, I think, that actually do their own financial statements. So we thought it's not really fair to the district to set us up for, we're always gonna have that finding unless a CPA is hired in the future. I'm not going for that license.
Our facility plan, and we're continuing to build that and collecting data, so that's kind of staying where we're at, and we're gonna, obviously, after this year with all the projects, we're gonna have a really good piece in place to move that forward, and Dave will be part of that work, including Ted May is coming in starting July 1 with us. Moving on to technology. Technology plan, 3-year plan is being developed and collecting data and analyzing this. And we bumped this up, is in place, but action on completing the projects is not prioritized yet. There's certain elements, and we can share that at some point in time. Ivan Esquivel is our director, so he will be showing that, and he can share all that information. But right now, we've got a plan. There's action, but we haven't prioritized the actual action to make that happen. So more to come with that. Mod rate.
Mod rate, we touched briefly on that and closed, but mod rate has been, as you can see, we were at 1.2, I can't see it that far, but we slowly had been creeping that number down, which is what you want. So that mod rate, the experience modification rate, is actually, it's kind of like your credit rating. So based on the injuries that are reported and that result in lost time at work, your rate will increase. So you want to keep it below 1. That's a healthy mod rate. We went from 0.71 from last year to 1.21 this year. We had some significant work injuries that did result and are resulting in lost work time. So the mod rate went up. That then increases our insurance premiums. So again, opportunities there, signage for, if floors are wet, some training, safety training, communication. If I can get some posters and communications from our insurance company, we'll definitely do that and post those. Safety checks throughout the buildings, make sure that, things are safe for our staff. But our premium did go up substantially. It's actually going to double from 2023-24 to 24-25, from about 40,000 to about 80,000. So we're working on that.
Okay. Flipping into engagement and communications, and initially with the student activity, we had a little bit in the beginning of the year, and we were talking about, but it was
towards the end of first semester is when we collected the initial data.
and I think it was in this 55, 69 range. And as you just heard from Jillian before, we're right in that same pocket right now.
Yeah, it was started at 57% at the beginning of the year, the first semester, and at the end of this year it was 58. And again, that's not complete data either, so.
And you heard the plans and the movement for that in her conversation with us already. So good stuff to come. Parents and communication, we did not do a survey home to families until November. And based upon that data, we had 85 to 94% positive rating in people agreeing with the work that we're doing. We had some really great scores, especially I think it was 94% of people would go talk about our district to other places that they would want their kids and others to come to. So pretty awesome stuff and amazing things that are going on with our families. Staff engagement. We had done a survey a while back last year, and at that point in time, it was like below 64% positive rate response rate. That was last spring. Now we're at like an 85 to 94 with about 90% of people in our buildings. How often do you feel engaged at work? 90% are feeling that in their favorable rate, which is a pretty awesome thing moving forward. Retention, we were at like 4 to 5.9. This year we went down just a little bit with some of our turnover that we've had, but again, are optimistic and moving forward and working through that. We've got a whole strategic planning team that is working on like how do we increase that, or excuse me, decrease that percentage so that we can keep moving forward. So you'll hear more about that next year as well. Attendance, Carrie or Brad or anybody else who wants to chime in here too. At the beginning of the year, students were attending 85 to 89%. By the end, we're between that 90 and 94%. I don't know if you want to say anything. 94%, 94.88% is the indicator of students attending school, which is really awesome.
It's part of that collaboration that we have really worked hard to develop kind of that common language and common practice, and that's really helped just in terms of when kids are transitioning from FLC to middle school to high school, that parents have a good idea of what's coming, and it's pretty uniform and universal, and I think that's been huge.
So a lot of celebration, a lot of great stuff that's going on there. So appreciate all that work, and just one away from that exceptional, which is amazing for attendance. Student engagement. This is based upon like an adult who cares about them in the school, and in terms of like someone that they can go to, that they have someone there as an indicator. It's different than the student activity engagement. 89% of our kids had a positive response rate, according to our YRBS at that point in time. Was that last year or?
That was, I think it was the ATOD survey.
Okay, got it. And then we're at 89% within 1% increase at FLC, 3% increase at Horace Mann, and no data for BAMS due to the change in reporting. So why that means that is that last fall, when we gave students that survey from Panorama, we did it 6/12 versus 6/8. And then, so we were able to like figure out a little bit of where that data was. That's why BAMS isn't in there yet. But again, another positive rate. We went up just, I think a little bit. We went to 85% of our students having adults who cares for them within that area. Obviously, that's something, the other thing that our counselors have done with this, just so you all know, is with those 10 or 15% that are not there, they're calling those students down and asking like, hey, are you okay? What can we do? How can we help you? And sometimes it's a factor of like, well, I just didn't know I was filling this out. And other times it's like, we're legit, and how might we support that student in their well-being as we're moving forward. Flipping to our, I believe our last bucket here. Student well-being survey. And again, this is about how, if kids feel safe, we're a safe place to learn. At the beginning of the year, these are initial numbers from YRBS, 76%, so 74 to 84% it fell in that bucket. When we re-examine this again, we're up in that 85 to 94% rate, so that second tier. So a lot of changes to our safety plan, new language, sharing that information, and really creating that fostering safer school for our families and our kids. So a lot of kudos to, again, our safety committee and other people who are making that happen, as well as our building leaders and all of our staff, making sure that's a great safe place to learn on the daily. Safety plan in general, at the beginning of the school year, a safety plan exists and reviewed annually. Safety audit items completed. We bumped that up to school plan exists and is expanded and reviewed annually. Safety audit items are completed. We do that on the regular. Brad, I don't know if you want to share any other thing than what you shared with them every single month and year when you come in, but.
We've already started. Emails have already gone out. We're looking at our crisis manual already and updating things and trying to get some of the cultural playbook language in there and really tied it to some of our KPIs. And then, it's a constant thing that changes, as we know. So just trying to be up to date with that as much as possible. And with new things happening and new ideas, it's just, keeping that team together and keep collaborating on the monthly. And that's really, it's kudos to the whole team in terms of why we're green right now, is that we put an emphasis on, we need something in place, and everybody's kind of on board with it, and it's been good.
really good.
And considering like 2 years ago, we had a book, and yet some people were doing this, some people were doing this. We had like, it was a silo. Now you have this common language, and the crisis plan that we have, the amount of work that we put in for 2 years, it's amazing what we gotten done. So again, a great celebration in that area as well. Student behavior, 3.1 to 4% of students receive one or more in-school suspensions, out-of-school suspension, or expulsion. And we look at the end of the year, that decreased to 2.1 to 3% of students in that category. We dropped a percentage point within 1 year. Carrie, do you have anything else to say on that, or just what do you see, what we saw? Yeah, right? So another great thing. And again, continuing with our behavior matrices and our language that we're really establishing, the restorative practice and other things that you've heard, we're gonna keep moving forward with that as we get better every single day. Staff wellness, this was, again, the last one on the KPIs, and we took this just a few weeks ago, so we're just trying to there was no data point at the beginning, but specifically to their wellness in itself, it was 65 to 74% range. And really what we're working on right now is the staff, strategic planning team is going to be working on in the upcoming years and how we can increase that over the time. But again, within our panorama survey that we just put out in this spring, that's where we had the data point from this as well. Okay. A lot of information, and I want to thank Rick Matthew for kind of getting ahead already and like condensing it to one page. We're in the process for making that happen. You will also see from EduClimber to a full handout where you can see every single one of those buckets, as well as all the KPIs with the scoring too, that will be available for people and on our website, so people know where things are at. And then we will have something like this, just a one pager, so people can review really quickly where are we at for the given year. But overall, I'm very impressed with the work that we've done in a short period of time, again, and yet we still have some great learnings to continue forward and some really good action plans in place to make that the dials move up a little bit more. So,
Good.
All right. Okay.
Nice work.
Everybody in here. Okay, moving on. August 21st, and maybe this goes into referendum work that we're going to be talking about here in a little bit with the referendum update, is our grand opening. We're going to have both open house on that night, but we're also doing grand opening for BAMS and Horace Mann. We'll showcase Trefford, ELC, talk about some of the different things that are going on, but a majority of the tours and things like that will be going on in BAMS and Horace Mann. So if you're interested in coming out, it starts out at 5:30. We're going to be getting a lot of this messaging out within a few weeks. We're trying to hold back on it because people are in summer. They're not ready for this yet. But we will have, I think, 3 food trucks coming in. We're going to get some DJs coming through there too. So we'll have music out in front. We're going to be giving tours to the public. So not only is it school community, but other community members can come in and see all the work that's been done. I'm just going to do a really quick crash through here, and Dave, please help out in any which shape, way, or form. But these are just some of the recent pictures that you can see when you walk in, if you can walk into our building at this point in time, because there's a lot. This is the high school cafeteria and commons area. They're just finishing up the painting on the walls. If you can see the past, there was a lot of maroon in that area. Now we're simplifying it to that orange and gray and black. So flooring should be coming in a few weeks, or
they started prepping. There's probably almost 2 weeks of prep on that floor. With rubber, you want it as flat as you can be. So they're in that progress right now. So
a lot of awesome stuff. Yeah, and on this survey, it's white right now, but they will have a brand. So we're, and the brand is I don't know what the best way to do it. It's Sinorama, like pressing on.
It's basically a vinyl, but it's so tight that it looks like it's actually painted on. It's pretty impressive.
And that will be coming on after the floor is put in play. This is just a quick update. Your lockers are no longer maroon. They're going into this gray finish. And we finally got the right coat and what we wanted just a couple days ago, but that work is in the process. There's over 800 of them that they have to sand down, blast, and then spray. It takes quite some time. They're almost done with the second floor at the high school right now, and then they're just going to work themselves through. This is an image of the high school, one of the high school classrooms with furniture in it right now, so you can start seeing what that looks like. Again, a lot of stuff movable and flexible for the learning, but 30 desks fit in there really comfortably. Not saying that we're going to use all those in every situation, but a lot of space for the start of the school year with that. I have to take a picture of this. This is all the furniture that's stockpiled in, and this is probably, and this is an old picture. There's probably more than in there than now, but it's at the Bessie Ellen Gym of how much furniture is actually coming in to basically offset the 23 classrooms that we have, including the cafeterias, our library, and other places within our building to make sure that we meet the furniture needs of our students and our staff.
You can't almost get in there anymore.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
More of them this week.
More to come, yeah, more truckloads. This is another awesome win. We were able to open up our weight room just a couple of weeks ago, and we've already got students coming in for wellness training and strength and speed for the summer. There's a picture, I think, of all the middle school students. We've had a great number participating from the high school. I think there's average around 60 students a day. And then the middle school, 60 students a day coming in, participating in this magnificent facility. We've got 3 amazing coaches and persons making it happen on the daily. So shout outs to them too, but really amazing place for our kids and our staff actually to really strengthen who we are. Lockers I already showed you before, so that's a double. And this is the Family Consumer Ed culinary room. This is an older picture, but I just want to throw it in here, but all new cabinetries going in. It's all in there already if you take a look now, but this is just that actual implementation happening right. So more to be continued. I don't know if you want to add any more that we've done.
No, we're just flying, and we're in the final stages of the putback stage, so now it's just finishing touches, so things are really moving along quickly.
And I think the whole back lot of the high school is now blacktopped
and some of it's striped.
Some of the striped so far, so we got a little bit more yet to go, but yeah, it's amazing. It would be nice to get you all in there before that open house so you can walk through it too to see. We did this, what was it, a couple months back, and you saw some of the basics, but there's a lot of changes going on here, and it's pretty remarkable, what we have for this district. Yes.
Good question on the high school classroom addition. Is there going to be like a group of us, one department moving into those new rooms, or a mix match?
Wait, you want to talk about that quickly?
Yeah, so we kind of went through that process with staff, or any interest in things like that. Fortunately for me, it wasn't a high volume of people want to move all their stuff. So we had 6 rooms, 6 were interested. But no, we have at least one department, social studies, ELA, math, moving over, adding special education and exploration also have a room over there. So we tried to be as strategic as possible to try to get one of each, and it worked out pretty nicely. And like Mr. Lyle, give him a little shout out. He's been in the classroom without a window for, what do you say, 8, 9, 10 years now. So I gave him the classroom with the most windows. Figured he spent his time in the darkness. Went from there, and we'll turn that into just another space for our staff to use. So, but yeah, it worked out. Fortunately, I didn't have to pull straws or anything, so.
Good.
Nice. Any other questions? So a lot of great things going on in this district. We love it. This is the Oriole Outfitters component. It kind of falls under the engagement and the financial operations. This is the report. I can't really speak to it, but Kurt Wismer and his team and the students do an amazing job of really, branding us and continuing to make the best that we can be as well. So it's all in here, and all their gains throughout the year. But what is so amazing is that giving students the opportunity to own that work and to really participate in a real life scenario and making it relevant. And so you see some great success there every single year. And again, Mr. Wismer is a huge part of that to make that a reality for our kids. So thanks to him and for all the students who make that work something special for our district too. A lot of wins. Okay, going back to engagement communications, graduation day, 2024-25. One of the things that we found this year, we moved it to the middle of the week with the Memorial Day weekend. We had it on Thursday night. We see that there was, at the conclusion of it this year, and we talked about having it Thursday again next year, but what we're seeing is that we want to try to avoid any kind of conflicts with sports or activities or other things like that. And so retuning that with fine arts department and scheduling, as well as our activities groups, as well as our athletics, the one night that really doesn't play into effect is the Wednesday. And so right now, the proposal, and we're just talking about this tonight, but we'll obviously come back to a vote in July, but just want to share with y'all, that is where we're directing that date. So Wednesday night would be the actual graduation date. It's still in the middle of the week. The big thing that happens usually on Thursday is sectional track. Okay, so we want to, sectional track is really hard to, get by, because if you had multiple students in it and they have tons of different districts who are competing in it, so they can't just shift the times because of that. So it's just I don't know if you want to add any more on that.
Yeah, like there's no moving sectional track. I mean, with softball and baseball, we ran into that, but those other schools are flexible with us, and there's a WIA rule in place if we can't come to an agreement when those games are going to be held, if it lands on a graduation day for schools. But track was really, we had Gavin who came to graduation, walked across the stage, threw up his cap, and went back to Appleton, got pulled over for speeding on his way back to get to his last event. So those are things that we want to avoid. We don't want to have students have to make a decision on, do I go to my graduation or do I go to a potential thing where I could keep advancing and potentially go to state. So track is really the big one.
And I mentioned a couple districts that held it on Memorial Day weekend. I think there was a Saturday afternoon perhaps, or Sunday, I don't remember, and then a couple on Sunday. And I wonder if you could maybe contact them to see how that works. Do they get complaints from parents that don't want it on a holiday weekend? Or does everybody except for that 1 year with that one senior that, they can spend the day doing graduation versus vacation, stuff like that? I think that's always, going back to that first survey and that's one thing that's been kind of missed, as to just how difficult is it to really have it on Sunday afternoon, like how it's worked out in the past.
I think one of the biggest things too, we noticed this year too, and maybe Dwayne can talk about this, but staff was appreciative of, for the most part, being able to do it during the middle of the week so they could be there. A lot of them have families, and the commitment, again, above and beyond on the weekend is just one more thing, but I can definitely look into that and talk to some of those players, but I don't know if there's any other feedback that you got, Dwayne, or?
Yeah, and that was just some of the general feedback too, if you do move that weekend. A lot of, it's a culmination of the school year, a lot of teachers and other staff. It's personally too, I'll even say I look forward to Memorial Day weekend every year, but I know last time they're like, it was nice to have it here. I even talked with our arts department too, fine arts, and that, it just kind of helps alleviate it too if we do adjust that, because then it's the week prior. Kind of just allows those seniors, especially, a little more flexibility, because the end of the year comes so quick for them. But staff overall, I felt were appreciative of it. They felt, it was easier to attend from that status to we have school tomorrow. Doors are back open. I know we didn't this year, but next year potentially we do. Just we're in town, we're planning around it. It's kind of, as you said too, the note you had, that's the culmination of the year, and it's your most memorable day too. And staff are overall, very satisfied they could just attend and make it part of their days.
And I don't think we had a decline in attendance. We still had a really good showing for all the families that were in there, but I can't tell you from one year to the next whether or not there were more. But we don't also stop or ticket, our families in terms of limits to how many students can come in or families can come in. So everybody can come, which is a great thing that we still have that opportunity to do that. So.
With standing room only.
With standing room only again, so. And escaping even the gym at the end. I don't know if you gotta walk through it, you gotta try to get out of there, as a different one. But we'll bring it back for a vote in July, just so everybody has that, but just wanted to get that out in front so we can have a conversation. But I will look into that too, those of you, okay?
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Okay. The only other thing that I have in my report is under safe and emotional schools, just SRO update. We're going to be, Sean is going to be moving into a new position for the village, and so we will be interviewing with Sean very shortly to hire a new person for the SRO for the buildings. And so he, brought so many great things for us, for our district, and yet at the same time, it's, bringing that new person on and seeing what they can bring into the work too, but really appreciative of all of his work and what he gave back for, I think, 8 years or 9 years to the district, which is a great amount of work. So really appreciate him and what he's done.
Can I just add on that?
Yeah.
Being fortunate to be police and fire commissioner here, and the guy was involved with approving the, and it clearly was a promotion that we were explaining that it was difficult at first for Sean because he loves doing the school stuff. But the opportunity arose. It was a several step type of promotion and something that he had always had as a end of career or closer to the end of career goal, and that worked out for him. So a very positive move for Sean.
Absolutely.
But he's willing, he's going to jump in, and I think they told us the chief said for the whole first school year, he'll be working with the new person.
Yeah, he's going to be that mentor / overseer of that within his position. When I talked to the chief, and as we walk through that, it'll help out with that assistance, then transition to the bridge. So, yeah. Okay, next month, we'll talk about Johnson Bus Transportation. We'll have a really fine tune where we asked all families who were bus riders last year or the years before to complete applications. We were down to the final things with that. We were in terms of like who's riding, who's not, where are we at. It's been, you talk about kudos to our secretaries and to all the people that are putting that time in, making all the calls home, making sure that everybody gets their voice into the process. So we get the close and most accurate number that we can give back to Johnson Bus so that we can determine what does that look like in terms of the routes and everything else that can move forward. So
Do these guys, if they want to go? Yes, sir.
Yeah, anytime they can.
Yeah, you guys want to head over? Feel free.
We don't have too much more. We're almost done, so we're there. But yes, you're always. I hope you know that they have that chance to leave the room if they ever want to. We'll be talking about insurance carriers. We're going to be talking about student co-curricular handbooks as well as code books too as well. We will bring up Title IX policy that just came into play and review our policy as well. We'll probably start talking a little bit about the welcome back plan for the fall, and that'll bring us to a pretty much complete agenda as well.
Awesome.
Okay.
All right. Well, our last item is new business, and we only have 3 items today on our new business. The first one is to consider approval of 1 resignation as discussed in closed session. So we have 1 resignation for Lindsay Petrowski. So looking, if there's any other questions, otherwise we'll look for a motion to approve that resignation.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
All right, and then roll call.
Yes.
Matthew,
Yes.
Geckerman,
Yes.
Humper,
Yes.
Yeager, yes.
Our next item is consider approval of loan in the amount of $65,000 for Chromebooks for the 2024-2025 school year. Any additional questions from the board on that piece?
I just have a little bit more information. I just got the interest rate, which would be 5.75% over 4 years. But I am hoping to be able to use common school funds for this. I've been talking with Ivan to find out how we can make that work, where the Chromebooks would be checked in and out at the library, which is one of the requirements of common school funds, is it has to run through the library. So if we need this loan, I'll go ahead and pursue it. If it's approved, Dan already over at the bank has the heads up on it. But if I can use common school funds, then that would save us about $20,000 a year in payments.
Okay. So still, look for a motion if needed to approve the loan amount of $65,000 for Chromebooks for next year, 24-25 school year.
So moved.
Second?
Roll call maybe here.
All right, Matthew,
Yes.
Huck,
Yes.
Geckerman,
Yes.
Humphrey,
Yes.
Yeager.
Okay, and then our final item is to consider approval of extra duty stipend changes, which were called out in our packet. I don't know, Matt, is there anything else?
Yeah, I think one of the things when we were, and the leaders in here were part of this as well, and Julian also kind of lent into that as well. In terms of like, what do these stipends look like? We're reviewing them all, but also being fiscally responsible, like where we stand, how can we do the best with what we have, and then, shift some things around here. We're going from like PBIS coaches to NFDL playbook or cultural playbook positions, so flipping that more to a $500, but also the other big thing is you're adding more of those coaches too, because we didn't have it spread out, equitably across all 3 levels and including Trefford. So there are gonna be some things there that way. We are gonna be hopefully a grant award for our mentor position. So that can be anywhere from $500 to $750, depending on the grant dollars. And then we're adding some department grade level leaders for middle and elementary. High school has already had those in the past. And we're really trying to frame that into our academic team model as well. So those individuals need to be part of that as we move forward, but that is something we've got going. And then the final thing is we had these peer educational teammates, which were like for individuals who were coming in as new teachers who had like 10 years, 11, 12 years of experience, they would have like almost like a buddy. And that was that we had been paying a stipend for that. We feel like we should just do that on stewardship as far as like when someone comes in, let's help them, adjust to the department. That might even come from some of that grade level leader or department level too, just to help out and assist with that. But flipping that out and eliminating that. The other position that was eliminated was the EMTs. This is a tech kind of position that was around for quite some time, but it was more of like per level again, but specific to like, oh, we got a broken mouse or we got, to go fix the projector or whatnot. Ivan does a lot of that already. And we took those dollars and we're actually helping out with getting him an intern too, to help out throughout the year to have a little more skill set so they can just focus. What was going on with this, those were teachers too. So if they're teaching a class, they can't just all of a sudden bust from that area to go to another. So we just reposition some of those dollars back to an internship for Ivan working out this year. So those are the changes. Crew, does anybody else have anything else to say to any of that? That was part of it? Okay.
Do we know what the budget impact of all this is?
It's not we saved a little bit, but we're not talking thousands upon thousands of dollars because we kind of just repositioned some of the stuff. At first, we had a decent amount, but then we were reconsidering some of these other areas that we had priorities and making sure that our people were met. So, there is some saving, but not a ton of saving in the long run.
Any other questions? Okay, then I'll look for a motion to consider the approval of the extra duty stipend changes that were just explained.
A motion to approve it.
I could second, then roll call.
Humphrey,
Yes.
Geckerman,
Yes.
Huck,
Yes.
Yeager, yes, Matthew.
Yes.
All right, excellent. Well, that wraps us up today. It's 8:40 and our meeting for today is adjourned. So thank you, everyone. I know. I thought of that the other day. We were here with
Oh,
Oh, no.
I get your card with you.
Is that live still?
All right. Good night, Oriole Nation.
Good, really good, yeah. We went to